Shuttle 6, this is Control. Confirm you're ready for telemetry. Confirmed, Control. All sensors are up and functioning. All lag-range suites are up and operational. Whatever they're up to, the sensors will grab it for posterity. The name on her vac suit said, Raimhal. A handsome woman in her middle years, she might have been pretty. It was hard to tell under her cap, but it kept her hair from floating about in zero gravity. The blue glow from her instrument panel turned her face a darker purple and reflected off her tusks as she turned her chair on its gimbal. Lieutenant Amsamba? All shuttles report the sensor packages are in place and operational. The record net is operating 12 by 12. Thank you, Doctor. The woman in navy blue nodded curtly, swimming back to her pilot's couch. How high is your confidence in our sweep of the orbitals? Over 90%, but we're seeing some lingering patterns. I'm convinced they haven't lifted anything to even a low planetary orbit, but it looks like they could any time now. Raimhal swung back to her seat, smiling serenely. We're getting a lot of good intel from their telecommunications, though it's loose band and televised content. Nothing in high resolution, but some of it is in colour. So it's true. They're all brown? Amsamba looked back from her couch and bit her lip. And that many men? There's been talk. Well, that is, speculation on the mothership. Just with the Marines, you know. Raimhal turned back, and the cabin camera caught the grin that lit up her face. She cleared her throat, scalding her features. Yes, Lieutenant, it's true. Their coloration ranges from a pale beige to a very dark brown, and no tusks. There are some startling sociological asymmetries, but you can assure the Marines back on the Heraldic that the men look quite compatible. Quite? The curiosity etched on Amsamba's face made Raimhal giggle, and Amsamba blushed furiously. Relax, Lieutenant. I'm only yanking your tusks. They look very compatible, though I think we'll have a busy time. They're doing some incredibly hazardous things with nuclear testing, and reports indicate nuclear strikes on 2 urban areas since the first survey. We're firming up the data, but there may have been over 100, depending on the yield, and we haven't confirmed all the locations. Raimhal blanched just as quickly as she blushed moments before. That's barbaric! They're a pre-unification culture, and it doesn't look like it's going smoothly. Still, the scientific community can debate their social imbalances once we're home. They don't have any kind of operational data net, and even their military comm traffic isn't meaningfully encrypted. Raimhal gave the junior officer a shrug that was mostly muffled by the cumbersome suit. No shore leave this visit, but if the sociologists agree, Survey 3 may open a dialogue. We don't want to spook these people. There are some very unpredictable forces in play on this planet. Debt? The lieutenant snorted. The Ricari are still grousing about that one. Over 3% of species call their world some variation of that. Land dwellers do what land dwellers do. Raimhal looked thoughtful. In this case, linguistics agrees their word is more like loam. At any rate, there's every chance Heraldic will be sent back. Tell the Marines to be patient, as well as any sailors looking to impress the locals. You don't think they're primitives, do you? I mean, Lieutenant. A look of annoyance crossed Raimhal's face. There is a vast difference between technical and social sophistication, even amongst pre-Bronze Age civilizations, and these people are coming along startlingly quickly on the former. Survey 1 reported their televised broadcasts were barely in their infancy, and look at them now. As long as they aren't xenophobic, everything should be fine, I think. Amsaba's face took on a dreamy expression, but she tugged at her own cap and pulled herself back toward the control couch. Well, the sooner you confirm the lack of sensor nets, the sooner we can bring gravity fields back up. Floating around in zero gravity like our ancestors is romantic for maybe 12 minutes. Agreed, Raimhal nodded, putting up the lesser landmass. The natives considered it to be in their planetary north. At any rate, our sensor net is up. Next step will be to set up the HAB modules on the far side of their moon. Once the tracing team is in place, it's back home for us. A few weeks from now, when you'll be swapping this story for drinks and trying to impress the boys. Maybe, Doctor, but a planet full of men? Amsaba tugged herself down into the flight couch and started buckling in. I can see why the first survey was kept secret, because they'll all say I'm lying through my tasks. That they may, Lieutenant. That they... Goddess, we're getting reports. Another nuclear detonation in one of their deserts? Raimhal's control panel lit up, clamoring for her attention as she localized the data feed. Cameras on the sensor net showed a fountain of blue fire pointing straight out into the planet's atmosphere. Some sort of subsurface test. Give me another minute to nail this down. I want out of this vac suit, and I think it's fair to give the all-clear to spin up the grav generators. I think we can call this a good day's... Fucking Turok shit! The Heraldic! Amsaba screamed, though she never froze while she strapped in. Mere moments later, the pinnace began boosting out of orbit. All shuttles, give me a sit-rep and converge at L3 now. I repeat, leave orbit for L3 now. The cabin camera tracked Raimhal as she pulled up orbital data on her monitor. The Heraldic? What? They... Tracking resolution started firming up on the monitor, showing a trail of particulates and plasma that was already dissipating in a long trail out into deep space. It's... gone. That's what I said, Doc. I was plotting a course back when the cruiser just vaporized. What the deeps? I don't know. Raimhal shook her head as she blanched in terror. The Humans aren't even in orbit yet. Could it be an asteroid impact? Well, it was something, and that's not the worst. Amsaba started throttling up, and her hand gripped the control stick tight. Her voice was grim as she looked back. Without Heraldic, we're marooned. I don't... Jama hit stop on the recording and closed down his omnipad. And that laddie was that. Oh aye, it turned out to be a mistake. Those well-behaved humans stuck a steel cap on top of a nuclear blast, launching it at 38 miles per second, and right into Heraldic. Left nae all but a smear. But that's... Alantel sputtered, trying to find the words. As a sailor, the thought of being marooned surfaced first. What happened to the shuttle crews? A harrowing tale, but there are things as yet none to know. The Navy believed Heraldic was hit by a nuclear-powered rail cannon, but thankfully calmer heads prevailed. Before the sensor data was refined, they were caused to come back with a strike force. Hamera's scowl took on epic proportions. Simple bad luck. Heraldic was close in to help lay the sensor net, and helpless without any shields or gravitex up. Aye, the collision was a 1,000,000 to 1 chance, but those happen all the time. But how did... Alantel's mind whirled. Humanity couldn't have launched an attack. It looked like an attack, and could easily have been taken as one. A survey cruiser blotted out of existence, with every woman on board? How had the shuttle crew survived? Could they have? How did people not know these things? For that matter, how did the professor... Why do you... That's all I have to say on it. And if you say a word, you'll regret it and name a stick. Hamaras receded into the shadows of his chair. You're friends with your human, aren't you? Alantel steadied himself, and bought a moment by taking a sip of his tea. I am. He lifted his chin defiantly as he spoke. Perhaps that's your lesson for your time here, then, Hamaras said firmly. Humans are the best friends you could want, but with all the damage done, there's no to be gained by making it worse, prodding people and interfering. Truer words were never said. I've known friend Andy long enough to know that. Alantel took another delicate sip of tea. Under his wing, friend Andy had blossomed. He was still an eclectic mix of human and Shulvanti masculinity, but that was his charm. In truth, Alantel was slightly jealous of his unique panache. Beneath the veneer lay the stoic Indian warrior from the movies. The scars he bore were deep and invisible, and the one thing he was certain of was his incomprehension. Unlike most men, Andy rarely reached out, but when he did, you knew he was on the verge of drowning. When they'd met, Alantel had seen a lonely man in need of a friend. Andy had needed fun in his life, and Alantel was happy to provide. Between him, their suitors, and Andy's captain, he was no longer constantly on guard. Only one more step remained, Find Andy suitable wives that would shower him with love and care to keep his demons forever at bay. Goodness knew he'd done his best to surround Andy with suitors, but there was still a reticence Andy had yet to explain. Of all the possible ladies he could have steered Andy towards, it had to be her. He feared the repercussions of a dalliance between his friend and the princess, but all was not lost. There was more to Professor Ramirez than met the eye. Perhaps his insights might be useful, if he could figure out what exactly his jailer was getting at. Alantel settled the tea on its saucer, nursing his fingertips. Illuminated cabinets lined the walls of Ramirez's chambers, filled with innumerable curios and oddities, and the tea steamed evilly in the dim half-light. Alantel turned his mind back to what he'd seen. The horror of being marooned? Trapped in an alien star system with no jump-capable ship? Short on food? No gravity? No shelter? The survivors must have felt surrounded by hostile natives. Could the Imperium have moved against friend Andy's world as a hostile aggressor? Perhaps many humans felt that they had. And how did Ramirez know these things? Aunt Zedalia had blushed at the mere mention of his name, while Father had called him a... Alantel was startled from his thoughts by a knock at the door, and he looked up to see Professor Warwick framed in the doorway. "Morning. Hope I'm not intruding."
"Ah, nay at all. Come in, Tom."
His jailer emerged from the recesses of his chair and waved at an empty seat.
"Mr. Alantel and I were just getting acquainted. Weren't we now?"
Startled or not, Alantel knew a prompt when he heard one. "Just so. Professor Ramirez and I were having the most illuminating discussion. I was telling him about our visit here at the Academy, and he was offering the most interesting context." "Sounds nifty." Warwick crossed the room and settled with a graceless familiarity into the offered chair before heaving a sigh. "I need to get out more. Duchess early on over at the Ministry of Education wants a travelling exhibit on humanity. I know you focus on the sciences, but maybe I could pay Vrism a visit someday." "My family will be only too pleased to host you. Tlaxcalan is a beautiful city." Alantel politely inclined his head as he watched Ramirez and Warwick. Tea was offered, with the elder Cambrian making a fuss. Their interplay was curious. It felt as if he were being allowed within one of Father's private meetings, as his jailers were conspicuous about including him. "So, you two are getting on?" It was an indelicate question, but Warwick moved past it. "Ganya gave you and your friends into my care without much warning, Alantel. I think the girls will get on, and I'm sure Deshin will take good care of Andre." A lifetime of deportment came to his rescue, and he managed not to spit out his tea. Alantel nodded his assent as he took another sip.
"Aye, but how are you, Tom? You look, well, a bit fashed, if you don't mind my saying so."
Ramirez took up his cup and settled back.
"The lad's fine, and I'm sure Deshin is going to give his friend the royal treatment."
Alantel looked away, certain he goggled. Somehow, Professor Ramirez was aware of the subterfuge behind Cousin Kalira posing as Deshin. But if Ramirez knew what Warwick knew, did Warwick know that Ramirez knew? Maybe. There's this whole period of mourning for Camordri now. Events have upset things. "Stuff," Warwick said, peering at his tea while Alantel picked over the intricacies being laid bare. So Warwick knew that Ramirez knew, but neither man knew that he knew? This complicated everything. If Warwick knew Deshin was getting on with friend Andy, would he lift a finger to stand in the way of her interests? Her desires would surely be his. No. Whatever happened, friend Andy's fate rested entirely upon his shoulders.
"Ah, well, I expect it's an adjustment for you, as much as anyone, but less than most."
Ramirez smiled over his teacup.
"So what's on your mind? Surely you're no considering a fourth wife yet, are you?"
Warwick huffed and set his tea aside to rub his forehead. "Charmer, please. I don't think I could survive another wedding. I guess I've had a lot on my mind lately. Been in a mood. A friend of mine passed away back on Earth. With everything that's been going on, I haven't even had a chance to process it." He sighed heavily, looking over the curios. "It's not like I could have gone back in time for the service."
"Aye, well there is that, and I'm sorry for your loss, my friend."
Ramirez set his cup aside. So, who was she? How do you know it was a woman? Warwick said warily, shifting around in the heavy chair uncomfortably. And don't say it's a 50-50 chance, please. Ramirez peered at Warwick under his brows. Really, lad? So, who was she? She was close. A friend I loved. I had a message that she passed away in an accident. Warwick hunched over and tucked a fist under his chin, leaning on it. I don't want to act like I'm homesick for Earth, because I'm not. I mean, the people I'm close to are only a message away. But Cindy was someone I'd known most of my life. I guess I didn't want to get all broody about it while Solani was courting me, plus the McClendons, Ifrovi, and, well, all of it. On top of that, I'm a little, I don't know, put off, I suppose, by the class I have to teach this term. Warwick paused, looking at him. I'm sorry, Alantal. There's probably a bit much to lay out. Jummer and I can talk as professor to professor, but I don't want to ruin your morning. Thank you kindly for your concern, sir, and may her memory be eternal, he offered solemnly. Your efforts as our lead jailer and host must weigh upon your time to mourn, and I'd be loath to think we burdened you unfairly. Whatever you may say, please know you have my utmost discretion. It was a nice change of pace to be treated with a level of candour outside of the fashion club and the company of his gentleman-in-waiting. Well, that was said like a Vascon, and prettily done, Ramirez grumbled. So, tell us about this lass. It was an early summer night, and I went to hang out with my friends, and she was there. Warwick pursed his lips, and his expression took on a faraway look. A dark, punk hairdo and strumming a medallion. It's like a Zenfra, sort of. Turned out she had no idea how to play, but I screwed up my courage and said hello, and that started something that lasted a lifetime. We were always there for each other. She made me smile. I know eventually I'll think of how fortunate I was to know her, but I'm a long way from there yet. Aye, that's love, true enough. Hang on to your friends, Master Alantel. Tom remained staring into his tea, as if it might offer answers, before coming back to himself. You know, Jama, you're going to have to tell me how it is you've never married. Isn't that practically heresy? Well, I can't say you're wrong there, and it wasn't always easy back in those days for a man to hold down a real career. But I've had a lifetime of adventures, and it's been bloody marvellous. I've never been the kind to settle down, though there have been a few who came close to netting me. There was a Vascon girl as hired me to recover a statuette, waylaid by some night crew as didn't want to part with it. Zedalia nearly swept me off my feet in the process, and... Alontel choked on his tea and wheezed. What's the matter, lad? Alontel waved as demurely as he could while sputtering for breath. Just went down wrong. I'm fine. I do beg your pardon. Dinna waste good tea, lad. Ramirez bestowed a fresh scowl of disapproval before turning back to Warwick. I ken the distance is nae easy, and I'm sorry for your loss, Tom. But what's got you in a diva over your classes? It's nae your marriage fundamental seminar, is it? Please don't call it mine. But no. As a matter of fact, I think I'm going to draft Mr. Alantal Zulayman and his friend Andre into helping me out. Vadim Dasari walked away with a dozen proposals. I expect Deshin would get upset with me if I just turned them loose on just Andre. Oh, I dare say she would. Professor Ramirez gave an earthy chuckle. I hear the lad can run, though. Yeah, thankfully. A bunch of sisters and cousins and whatnot, dropping off the students. Warwick rubbed his brow and shook his head. I expect you don't get anything like that of Rhythm, since you have boys there, but pre-term here gets a bit hands-on. Anyway, that's not it, Jama. This coming term, I'm covering my Earth's second global war, which was even uglier than the first. That particular kind of enthusiasm has been dampened the last few months, yes, Alantal muttered, thinking about the incident that had gotten his friend in a serious amount of trouble, though it seemed that his words had been missed by both professors. Ramirez disappeared into the recesses of his armchair. And I've been trying to paint a good picture of humanity, but teaching these events is a hurdle. I mean, I'm holding a dance that mirrors the time, but the class will cover the worst atrocities we ever visited on ourselves. Warwick's hands clenched the arm of his chair in frustration. Every time I think I've come to grips with the material, Part of me knows it will drag perceptions of humanity back, instead of pushing it forward.
You care about what your young lasses think of you, I can.
Of course I do, but think I've been sending some mixed messages lately. Warwick pursed his lips fretfully. I've tried to show us at our best, but I keep coming back to the evils we've done. Now that I've reached the worst, part of me recoils at putting it on display.
Humanity's still here. It could have been worse.
Hemaris's words emerged from the depth of his chair.
Besides, it's your job to teach the truth as best you can it, not fill them with sunlight and seafoam. Once you do that, help them to decide what they'll make of it, and you're an educator.
We used nuclear weapons on ourselves, and I know how Shovanti think about that. Inclusion in the conversation was starting to feel like a mixed blessing at best, and Alantel did his best to disappear into his chair, like his jailer.
Aye, could have been worse. Perhaps instead of looking on it as your worst of times, why not think of overcoming it as your finest moment?
I'd like nothing more, but we did things. There's a human I've invited. He's going to talk about what happened to his people, and it's awful.
Aye, and he's still here to talk on it. Like I said, lad, it could be worse.
Jama leaned forward into the light, abruptly, giving Alantel a start.
I teach about dead worlds. The end of all things. You think nuclear wars bother me? Aye, they do. But the Ujarans are my bloody doorstop, and that's neither half of it, you ken. The Imperium put a stop to that sort of thing. Aye, the Consortium and even the Alliance too. But I've stood on glassed-over worlds. There's far worse out in the dark.
Warwick grimaced at their host and huffed. I'm starting to see why this building is always so empty. And please, don't remind me about that organism thing the Imperium wiped out. That gave me nightmares for days.
Lad, there's things out there as could give you nightmares for months.
Alantel blanched. This was not at all the sort of discussion he'd been hoping for. Far from helping friend Andy, the last thing he needed was to have two brooding humans. Seeing an opportunity to turn the conversation, he took it. You mentioned a dance, Professor Warwick. I must say that has been the biggest shock, seeing as society has been so quiet as of late. Oh. Warwick scrunched around in the woman-sized armchair. Drawing out his omnipad, he raised it meaningfully. Yes, educational, so our head administrators reached out to yours to see how many boys will come. I plan to keep it down to just 2 girls for every boy, which is more or less true to the time and place, and it will help keep anything from getting out of control. 2. Alanto held out his omnipad as Warwick swiped over a file. The notion of just 2 women on his arms was... well, it worked, but who would hold his cape? On top of that, there was Kalai and Citri, and Zatara made free. That sounds very... conservative? Perhaps exclusive? USO dances are all about providing some entertainment at a time when a lot of young soldiers were uprooted from home. I'm going to bribe a friend of mine for all the ice cream he can bring. The girls can wear the uniforms while the boys dress in civvies, which is the only way it works at all, but it should be fun. Well, I do love a ball. I'm certain that it will be the talk of the Bon Ton. Despite his misgivings, a chance to dress up for an evening out held an irresistible charm, especially if it meant dressing in some chic human garb. It might be just the thing. Why, at 2 girls for every boy, the girls would surely draw friend Dandy away for some of the evening. It could work. As far as I know, it'll be the first co-ed dance in the Academy's history, so that's a fair bet. Warwick gave a crooked smile, but his mood seemed much improved. It was all about shaping things to their right and proper conclusion. Surely that was the solution. He just needed to keep friend Dandy busy, and the rest would take care of itself. Alantal sat forward and puffed out his chest. As to your marriage seminar, sir, I'm sure I speak for friend Dandy and myself when I say that we'd be only too happy to assist. Hameres snickered. The bed was warm, big as a boat, and Shrek floated blissfully in that space just between sleep and waking. A small fortress of pillows covered her as she dozed under the thick blankets, thinking of Gore. He looked so good sometimes she just wanted to run her fingers along his chest and tease off their bandoliers. His psyche would twitch the way that always made her want to reach out and run a fingertip up its length and tease his thoughts, before doing other things. After all, she'd behaved. Gore had been so hurt, and she'd hate to cradle him to her and just rub against him, in a purely consensual way, and make it all right. But the bad times had gone. He didn't flinch for them anymore, and the idea of draping herself around him and rolling over together, feeling him against her and smelling his pelt. It wasn't just sex. They were all getting older. She'd earned her time, and they really ought to settle down. The derelict menthol house wasn't that bad. A little paint and some tripwires, and it would be fine. They could make an offer and get Gore the private bedroom he deserved. Give him the loving home he needed, while she ran her hands over his... The pleasant reverie lasted until Ratch slammed the door, jolting her awake. She tossed one of her pillows at Ratch, who dodged. "Sash got it out of him," she said, shouldering the door closed behind her. Shrek rolled over and yawned. There was still an hour before noon, and catching up on sleep never felt so good. Blearily, she opened an eye. Ratch was slumped against the doorway and crossed her arms, her psyche flicking.
"Ratch, I'm tired, and whatever it is can't be that bad."
"Yeah,
it's mostly harmless," Ratch nodded. "I won't mind much." "Not really."
Shrek regarded her, then closed her eyes.
"We're getting paid right."
Good hard credits for a stupid easy job.
I'm not even bringing any grenades."
Ratch tugged her top aside and fell into her bed.
"Sort of a side job for the Duchess before we get to the main gig. That one's just a bait and switch, though the perp is supposed to be dangerous. But this afternoon is just a side job. Easy stuff." "Just one perp?"
Shrek rolled over and tucked the sheet up.
"Sounds like easy meat." "Well..."
One of Shrek's eyes opened as something clawed at her thoughts.
"Ratch, what do you mean you won't mind?" "Well..."
"Hey kids, get ready, it's time to play. Jassy and the Petrin, they'll save the day. With their paws a-tapping and their smiles so bright, the Funshine Band, it's gonna be alright."
"I'm going to kill Gore," Shrek fumed. "No, first I'm going to kill Sunjacer. Table manners my ass. There's no way that mangy bitch isn't laughing her psyche off. Then I'm going to kill Gore because he can't keep from stuffing his face for just 1 hour.
There was always room for a 1 in a million chance. Shit happened, right? It was just that kind of life. Things happened on Ops all the time that no one in their right mind would believe. People just came up with crazy shit, then their crazy shit met someone else's crazy shit, and before you knew it, anything reasonable was long gone, and all you could do was burn the evidence and get out with the credits. But this? This was beyond crazy shit. This was beyond coincidence or chance. This was fucking sabotage.
Jassy and the Happy Peasant Funshine Band, hooray! With musical mystery every single day, with their claws a strumming and their tails a wagging, the Funshine Band, they're gonna leave me gonna leave me gagging.
Shrek rolled her eyes. Who in the deepest frozen wastes had ever heard of Jassy and the Happy Peasant Funshine Band? Whoever that was, there was no fucking way she just happened to look like the cartoon bitch. But no. Gore had to wander back to their rooms, grinning from ear to ear and smelling like a fish sandwich.
"All we have to do is show up for a kids show," he said. "Easy credits," he said. "You like kids,"
he said. Fat fucking chance.
"Hey there, everybody, gather round the screen. Jassy and the Peasant, the best you've seen. They're the coolest band around, playing tunes, they'll never let you down." "A favour to their new boss," he said, "since her niece is having a birthday party."
She spent the last hour knee-deep in little purple rugrats. Any thought of settling down with gore from earlier that morning disappeared when one of the little bitches threw up on her leg. It wasn't even the kind of problem she could shoot, and dark mother, would someone please turn that ungoddessly music down? She'd heard it 9 fucking times already. Whoever had come up with the Happy Petrin Funshine Band crap needed to die. Die! Die! Whoever had come up with their stupid, insipid, gag-inducing theme song needed to die uneaten in a shallow ditch. They had 2 more hours of this special hell, and everyone was looking at her, taking pictures.
Go over a trip to shell my fuzzy ass.
So come with us, dance and sing along with Jessie and the Petrin, you... Shrug felt a pair of tiny hands yanking her aside, which was bad enough. The little ankle biters had been using it like a rope, asking if she wanted to join them in the swimming pool, as if she just...
Yow!
Shrag shrieked as pain shot up her asiac. One of the toddlers had bit down on her asiac, and she leapt up on the stool, sending toddlers flying.
Get off! Get off! Get off!
And then things got worse. Citri's ears twitched as she stretched out. The track inside the gym was colder than she'd expected, but the company was wonderful. You get used to the weather, Cephis said as she warmed up. Anyway, there's a great cafe off the Commons and we can get a bite after. If you like sugarcane pie, theirs is amazing.
Oh, yeah, that sounds yummy.
Citri bounced experimentally. The gym floor was tacky underfoot and just right for her grip. Sapphire was sticking with the weights in the centre of the track, but that was fine too.
I'm always telling Kalai that any food is good food as long as you work out.
That's what I say. Sapphire dropped a weight that landed on the padded floor with a muffled boom and grinned. You wouldn't believe the soul-searching the twins had over their weight during Nevrovi. Like, you can't just work it off or skip a meal? Sheesh. Citri pouted her hands and leapt on the parallel bars, bounding between them before a half bound on the far side and a half cartwheel on the return. She stuck the landing flawlessly and took a bow when Sapphire whistled in appreciation.
Gymnastics aren't usually my thing, but my brother got me into it. It's really a lot more helpful than I thought it would be. Normally, the only thing a Korovador has to worry about is clearing the back or dodging their antlers. It's a shame none of you Northerners have a team up here.
It's impressive, but I don't think Shorvanti are built for that. Sapphire mopped her forehead and brushed back her hair. Diving, yes. Pouncing, not so much. Maybe you could get Senshiki to try.
You think she'd like to? I keep getting mixed signals from her.
Citri's tongue flickered over her lips as she pondered how to bring it up for the umpteenth time since she'd arrived. Sapphire was nice. She even knew enough from her training in specimen collection to appreciate the complex nuances of convergence in desiccation tolerances. But this was...
I was wondering. I've heard... things?
She scolded herself as her foot started thumping and leapt again, swinging under the bars. Kicking up on the swing, she lingered in a one-arm handstand and counted to 2 before tumbling along the back of the bar to push off into her landing. She thumped down solidly, though her ear came free of her headband smacking her in the nose. At least the exercise had her breathing hard, which felt good, but did not bring her any closer to what she wanted to know. What kind of things? Citri puffed out her cheeks in embarrassment.
Never mind. How long have you been diving?
The small talk sounded silly, but Sephi was someone she could talk to. She didn't sail, so that made her safe. And she dove, so she probably knows someone who knew something. Oh, most of my life. Diving takes my mind off things, though you should see Desala. I won't admit it where she can hear, but while I pull in the depth and power kicks, she's got better form.
By the Greenwood, she and Zatara may kill each other. Anyway, your secret's safe with me. So, aside from the race and auditing your bio classes, thanks for that, by the way, I was wondering, it's just, you hear things, you know?
More things? Sephi cocked her head expressively.
You know, stuff,
She felt herself starting to blush, and stomped her foot without thinking. Leaning in, she whispered the forbidden word.
Bikinis?
Ooh! Sephi grinned impishly. Yeah, I suppose they are pretty scandalous. You certainly wouldn't want to go diving in one of them, because your top could come right off. Trust me, no one in their right mind thinks they're serious swimwear. Ow. Citri kept her tail from quivering and tried to act casual. So, you know who... I mean, my mother would probably kill me, but they're human, right? So if I wanted to look, I don't know, look extra good for a human guy? Oh, you want the special ones. Sephi looked to either side. It's just, my Sith cousin knew this girl from band camp. She said that her third cousin had a brother whose friend heard about this calendar thingy on Earth and... Citri hated, flinching, but her ears were starting to blush. She brazened her way through, but her voice almost ended with a squeak. Are they really from Ale? Yeah. Tell you what, we can have a word with Jaxmy. Really? Citri blinked. It seemed too easy. I mean, that's great. Sure. Don't tell anyone around here, though. Half the clubs are still pissed about our fundraiser. I really appreciate it. He's been really homesick, and I think this might be something he'd appreciate. Citri couldn't stop her tail from twitching happily as she smiled widely at her new friend. I promise I'll keep it a secret. I mean, Urbians aren't the species from the sex planet anymore, but, But you want to look good for a human guy. Zephyr hefted her gym bag with a nod to the door. So you're courting your friend, Andy? Citri felt the blush at the tip of her ears spreading down. I'm one of several. Hey, don't worry about Desi. She's had a pretty secluded childhood, but she's one of the best people I know. Well, not too much about her. I'm worried about some of the others back home. Zephyr smiled knowingly, and relief flooded through Citri as she left the gym with her. She was feeling jumpy, but it had to be relief jumpy, not thumpy jumpy, or practice jumpy, or even joy jumpy. Mission accomplished. Though, with his knowledge of fashion, it probably wouldn't hurt to tell Alantel. Stretched out atop the bleachers, Zinchiki watched the pair depart, noting the twitch in Citri/Delicious's tail. Just watching made her want to bat it with her hand, and she breathed deeply. Even the memory of the Urbian scent made her stomach rumble. It just came down to separating Sethir from her prisoner. But bikinis? Dark mother! Why did it always come down to bikinis? Reporting to work here, boss. The low, rapid English caught Desi by surprise, as she looked up to see the grinning human assigned to her. Andy, She halted and shook her head. Yeah, I hate saying so was that more res English? No, that was a little Paul Newman. Andy's grin grew wider. An old movie actor. You mean human movies? Oh yeah, Mum raised us on the classics. John Wayne's been pretty popular. Same with Lee Marvin, Steve McQueen, Charlton Heston, Charles Bronson, and Yul Brynner. Don't tell me your dad smuggled. Shh, not so loud. We have a movie club where we watch the movies he brought up as part of the collection here. Let me guess, they haven't been vetted by the Ministry of Culture, and you don't want any attention? Oh, mean to say, no, it's... Well, you must know about chocolate. You have chocolate? I haven't seen chocolate in... Shh! My father gets it in a deal, but you wouldn't believe the price out in town. If people knew we had it at movie night, we'd be mobbed. But let's compare collections. I mean, father brought everything he could get his hands on, but... Do you have a favourite? Several, though I like some of the older classics before CGI. Fights just looked more real back in the day. Well, we'll have to set something up. Captive's Truce? Desi beamed when he nodded. So, this is the collection. Father wanted you to take a look at the Native American section of the collection and give us your opinion. He's also asked us to document if there's anything you think needs a different context or label. I'll be happy to take a look, though we're a pretty varied bunch. Most folks think we're all the same ethnicity. You're not? Oh no. Almost every nation had different languages, cultures, histories, you name it. He explained, as they walked through the exhibition. Think about it this way. From an outside perspective, all Shovanti look the same, but would a Cambrian, a Sevastatavian, a Banriga, or an Amaic ever say they're just Shovanti? Desi's snigger was loud in the silence of the museum.
Have you met Professor Jimenez?
No, though my friend Delantau seems afraid of him. He won't say why.
Probably the eyebrows, but Father's friend has a reputation.
She rolled her eyes, but she gave him a sly look.
He's one of 3 men who teach on campus, and, well, sometimes his material is pretty dark and awful.
Real Miskatonic stuff, huh? I guess Cambrian's gotta be Cambrian. Is that whole goddess for queen and Cambria, right? Andy rolled into the Cambrian burr and she laughed.
Sounds like it. Anyway, everything here is organized from east to west. The exhibit works down and around to the Voyager room, but lots of things aren't on display.
Gonna take me behind? Andy raised one eyebrow and couldn't help but smirk as she flushed. Sorry, that wasn't... It just sort of popped out there.
Desi rolled her eyes. Goddess, please. We aren't 7. Anyway, how about we just take a look and see?
Time passed, and Andy started to get a sense of the collection. The assortment was a pretty eclectic bunch, though he'd never expected to find an authentic pet rock. Making their way through, Desi took notes as elements of the collection began to surprise him. This group is from a people called the Iroquois, and these are from the Huron. Here's a copy of their alphabet, their constitution, and replicas of original lacrosse sticks. Desi peered in close, looking over his shoulder.
So, is everything okay with this one?
Looks good to me, but that's not much of an endorsement, to be honest. My people lived on the other side of the continent. Looks like he did a pretty good job, though I'm surprised he was able to even find one of that one.
It just looks like an ordinary document book.
Desi made a note on her omnipad before studying it closely. It's an Iroquois passport. They're pretty rare, though I guess after the treaties were dissolved, the owner didn't need it anymore. And the portrait gallery here is pretty neat too. You got... Ooh. He studied the image, but knew it by heart. Of all the things to see so far from home.
What?
Deshin cocked her head, looking from him to the picture and back.
What is it?
This one. The one that's blown up in the frame?
Yes?
Your dad has it labelled as Natives in the Modern Era, Tradition Meets Modernity. Desi compared the entry to her omnipad and shook her head.
Is the listing wrong?
That's the Carlisle Indian boarding school, where our traditions went to die. That's where the Americans assimilated us.
How'd you know?
Because that's my great-great-great-great-grandma in the 6th row, 9th from the right with her 2 sisters. Deshin moved close and followed his finger as he pointed to the ghostly image in black and white. Grandma Mary was one of 37 Eastern Cilicians kidnapped by the federal government and forced to go to school in Pennsylvania.